so much for being here, and we are so pleased to have everybody here to hear our guest director discuss Anatomy of Grey. Virginia Smith was here about 10 years ago, is that right, Danny?
About that.
10, yeah.
She's older.
And we loved having her then, and we're so happy to have her back this time. We've had a great time. I know she's really given the students a wonderful experience, and as well as the faculty. So we're always happy to have her here, and look forward to hearing you talk today, Virginia. Yeah,
Great.
Come on up. Thanks.
Thanks.
I'm very informal, so I want you to be informal too, and I want you to be thinking of questions that you want to ask me and things that you'd like to say about this. But I want to start with just giving you a little bit. We're going to leave the doors open, aren't we? Come on up and sit in front. There's some beautiful, comfortable chairs here, and then I can look right at you and talk to you. I want to introduce myself a little, just because I think it's pertinent to the selection of this play. One of the things that's wonderful about coming here to Hendrix to do this job is that I get to select the play myself. And that's something that we don't always get to do as directors. Often people call us up and say, would you like to direct such and such? And you say, well, and you think, that's not my favorite play in the whole wide world, but maybe I'll do that. Or else it's, yes, I'd love to. But when I have come to Hendrix, I've been able to choose, with the help of the Hendrix faculty, I've been able to choose the plays that I want to do. So I grew up in northern Minnesota, and in a very small town, not very far from where my people came from my relatives, and especially on my mother's side. And I guess because of that, of driving by the different farms, they were people that came over from Germany, and they homesteaded in a particular area, and they were very poor, and they were able to hang on to their farms for a long time. And something about that past of driving, we didn't live in that country, we lived about 50 miles away, and so we always drove in to see aunts and uncles and look at the different farms that other relatives lived, and I guess that gave me a fascination of that time period. And so I've written plays in that area, and I'm really drawn to that kind of information. Those people that lived in that time before automobiles and telephones and radios and all of those things that connect people, easily. What connected people in those days were horses, pretty important, and rivers, also really important. And so I've just been kind of fascinated with that era, and that's one of the reasons why I was interested in Anatomy of Grey. Another reason that I was interested in that, I grew up and I went to school to kind of to study theater because, of course, I had a marvelous high school director. It's the reason many people go into theater. I had this marvelous, young, crazy man who was my director my senior year. And he told me I was a pretty good actress. And we took a play to state, won at competitions. And it was great. It was wonderful. And I went to college saying that I wanted to be a theater major. And lo and behold, here I am a whole career later, still interested in the same old thing, the same wonderful thing, which is really fascinating. Theater is really a mirror that we hold up to ourselves so that we can understand more about being human. Right? The bad parts of being human, as well as the excellent, jubilant things about being human. That's what it is, and it forever fascinates me. I get real tired and stressed out doing something, and I have 2 days off, and I'm saying, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? So that's it. But in the process of, after college, I taught high school for a while. I actually taught junior high school for a while. And then I moved to Duluth, Minnesota, and while I was there, I started my own children's theater company. somebody called me up on the phone and said, I hear you're a theater person. Could you do a program at our art center? And I said, there's not enough time to do a program in that. You want me to do a program on Sunday? Forget that. I don't do anything halfway. So I said, I'll tell you what. I will do a theater production for you in about 6 months. So, I'm sassy old me. And so I did, and I had my own children's theater there, doing children's theater for adults for about 3 years. And during that time, I started writing some plays about some of the things that I was interested in, and for kids theater. About that time, I got interested in doing professional theater. And so I auditioned for a company called American Players Theater in Spring Green, Wisconsin. It was their very first year. They're still in existence. And lo and behold, I got in the apprentice company, and I became a professional actress. I wasn't really a professional actress. They hardly paid me anything. But I started there, and then from there I moved to Chicago, and that's where my career really began. And I was there for about 16 years. And during the time I was in Chicago, I wrote plays, real plays for the theater. I also did a lot of writing for training. Corporate organizations will hire people to write things to help their employees learn things, and so I did a lot of that kind of work. I also was an actress. I also, that's where I really became a director, and that's where eventually I did my graduate work after I'd been out of school for quite a long time. I did my graduate work in directing, and that's really, I still write plays, I still act occasionally, but what my real love is now is directing, because I think it's the most interesting thing. And the reason I think it's the most interesting thing is because it's collaborative. It's not something I knew when I was in college studying to get my undergraduate degree, that would be the thing that would be the most exciting thing about doing theater, is that I can take my own really sincere and personal beliefs and thoughts and images and dreams and anything that I can cook up in my own head, and I can share it with a few designers and a few actors, and they will add to that, and it will become even more than my own, and that's a rush. That's it. That's what I like. That's my crack. Okay? Collaboration. And it takes a long time to figure something like that out about yourself. So, after I lived in Chicago, my first job as an academic was in South Bend, Indiana, at the University of Indiana South Bend. And while I was there, my husband and I kind of stumbled onto a house on the St. Joseph River. And it wasn't a very great house, but we had owned our home in Chicago, and we had a million things. We have so much stuff. And 2 big dogs. So we pretty much had to buy a house, and we had to buy a house as fast as we could because no landlord would ever let us have all those dogs and all that. So we bought a house, and it happened to be on the St. Joseph River. And then I experienced something that I hope all of you get to experience, which is my heart fell in love with a piece of ground. Now, I don't know if any of you have done that. I mean, I sort of had that because I'd been looking at my home ground back in northern Minnesota, where the people came from, where my people came from. But then I had an experience where I fell in love with a piece of ground, and it was on a river in Indiana. So now you know why I chose Anatomy of Grey as a play I wanted to work on. It's about a place in Indiana, and it's about a river in Indiana. Indiana's a beautiful state. I lived there for those 3 years, but when I was in Chicago, it's not too far to go visit and go camping or go looking around different towns. That's another thing I love to do, is go exploring around where I am. So, but that river got inside my soul, and I don't know what I'm going to do about it. I still have a whole life to live, and that river is in there. So one of the ways I'm able to express it is by doing a play like Anatomy of Grey. Now, Anatomy of Grey was written in about 1980, 1981, 82, somewhere in there. In 1981, it won a prize with the Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival as the best play of the year. Hanover College, a small college not unlike Hendrix in Indiana, did it, and Woody Harrelson happened to be in it. How about that? But it was a great play. It got a lot of people interested in it, and people interested in doing. The name of the play was The Diviners, and it's a beautiful play. And if you haven't read it, you might want to. It's about Indiana and these same people, not the same people, but people like these people in that same kind of time that I'm fascinated with. So Jim Leonard has written about 5 or 6 plays. I have a little list here if anybody wants to hear the rest of them. That's what's on my little card. Right now he's working in LA, writing TV movies and television series. He's actually good friends with Lee Blessing, who was here a couple weeks ago. Lee said to me, "Oh, you're doing Anatomy of Grey. I'll tell Jim. He'll be pleased to hear that you're having a good time with it." So, it's like a small world. Anyway, I love this play, and I have really enjoyed working with, I selected it because, of course, your theme this year is literature and medicine. And so I wanted to find something that was related to medicine, and of course, Anatomy of Grey. A lot of you don't know anything about Anatomy of Grey. I'm here talking about it like you know. Well, you're putting the puzzle together, aren't you? I'm giving you little clues, and you're on a mystery hunt now to find out what it's about. It's about a little village that's so kind of primitive by our standards. They don't have, it's, as I said before, all those modern conveniences. And it's at a time when most people in a small community like that, why it was founded, I don't know. It's an imaginary village, but there are basically farmers and people to keep the farm implements together, a blacksmith. And little families that seem to be fairly subsistence families, although they certainly have connection with the outside world because they have mail and things like that. It seems to me that they have mail, since people offer to write to each other. At that time, but there's no healer in the town. So a little girl who is the main character in the play, one of the main characters in the play, her dad is killed somehow. We know how. He probably has a heart attack, something like that. He's out plowing, and he has a heart attack, and he's just out there laying in the fields, and June actually is the one who finds him. And it's interesting that, again, the world loops back. A cousin of mine, a man who's a little bit younger than my mother, so a generation above me, had a farm, and he in fact farmed one of the original homestead lands from my family. And he died of a heart attack on his tractor plowing. And the tractor, of course, kept going. And so the tractor kept circling and circling in the yard. And my cousin was the one who saw that something was amiss out there and went out, and he was dead on the tractor. So again, there's another loop back to my life. Anyway, she prays. She prays to God that a healer is sent to her little town. And her prayer is answered. And a man is sent, a doctor is sent. I'm not going to tell you any more than that. I think that's enough. I want you to come and see the play. Bit more might be revealed in the course of this discussion. One of the reasons I chose it is that there's quite a few opportunities for students in it. And I even added 3 more opportunities by adding a few more townspeople to the stage. And they named themselves, and we call them by their names and all, and they have a few lines, because there were some crowd kind of lines that the playwright designated, and so we handed some of those out. They developed characterizations and personalities just like everybody else in the play. But it's a story about when new ideas come into a place. And one of the reasons medically I think it's interesting is that because of the way things are going forward in leaps and bounds, sometimes I think, oh man, I'm sort of glad I'm old, because I'm not so sure I want to see the world that has that in it. And in ways, I'm just like the people in gray, because the doctor, the healer, introduces germs to them. They never heard about anything like germs. What the heck is that? And what is a world now filled with? What do they tell us? That there's all kinds of animals in us, living in us, little tiny animals living in us. Do I really need to know that? That's how the people of gray feel. And with genetic engineering and food engineering, all of the things that we can do, cloning, all the things that science is taking us into, do I want to go there? Is this right? Is this ethical? Where does ethics come into this? I mean, it's the same kind of dilemma that the people of gray have, but way back, so we can kind of tee heed at them. We can say, they're so ignorant. They don't know what the world is going to bring and how wonderful it's going to be to know about germs and how we can fight them. Well, I think we're sort of still in the same place. We don't know. We don't know what marvelous things the world is going to bring us with the new things that are happening. But I think that's one of the discussions we can have around Anatomy of Grey, and that's why I thought it might be appropriate to bring into the Hendrix community for discussion during this year of literature and medicine. So that's my thinking. The next thing that happened is my collaborators, Danny Grace and Connie and Cherry and Anne, of course, my main collaborators, started doing that fabulous thing called collaboration, which is what the whole juice is for me. I already told you that. So we started talking in the beginning of August and keep talking, and we'll keep talking. We'll probably keep talking right until the play closes, and maybe some after will say, oh, I thought of one more idea for Anatomy of Grey. And I'll say, well, yeah, good. Oh, that's a fabulous idea. Wish we could have done that. But that's the fun. And then I came the end of August and cast people. And some of the cast is here, and I wish you'd raise your hands if you're in the cast. And then there's a whole bunch of people that are working on the show in props and costumes and scenic and lighting and publicity and all of the things, because that's the thing. It's all of us collaborating to make the show. It's not the actors that make the show. It's not the designers that make the show. It's absolutely everybody. So raise your hand if you're a part of the Anatomy of Grey. Marina, get your hand up there. Yeah, see, there's lots of people. There's always an army behind the people that are on stage, and they've all worked really hard. So we open on Wednesday next. We're pretty darned excited because we've done some things that we don't know if they've ever been done with Anatomy of Grey before or not. We don't know. We just follow our own dreams and ideas, and so that's. But Wednesday, you're invited to come and share this little vision, and it plays Thursday, Friday at 7:30, and Saturday at 2 p.m. And you might note that that's a little bit different schedule than other years. So this is a new thing. So don't miss it because you thought you could come on Saturday night or Sunday afternoon. Not going to happen. We won't be able to hold it for you. So that's what I have to say. So I'd love it if you had some questions. And yeah, Joe.
You talk about a sense of collaboration being really important to what you do.
Yeah.
What makes that, why can't you have that sense of collaboration working on a television show or a film? And one of the arguments that I hear is when you're working on one of those two things, you have to cater to an audience. So I guess the follow-up to that question is, don't you also have to cater to an audience doing theater?
Absolutely, absolutely. First of all, I've done television and I've done film, and and I find great, and I have great joy in doing those things. And is it collaborative? is a television commercial collaborative? Absolutely. It's absolutely collaborative. And the thing that's fun about it is that you come in the morning. I've only done it as an actor or as a coach of acting. But as an actor, you come in the morning, you meet everybody, and then you become this team that we lengthen out and make much bigger here when we're doing the play. And at the end, we're happy because we've made a production that we're really proud of, and it's going to go. So I think that collaboration is there, and you always think of the audience. You always do. I believe that the director is the representative of the audience. So the moments that I love in Anatomy of Grey are made in that way. They're made together, but they're made for an audience. And there's a couple times in the play, as many times as I've seen it, where I tear up. They're moments that mean a great deal to me, but I'm there and I'm there hoping that I'm experience what the audience will experience. I think that's the last character in our play always is the people who come and see it, because that energy of their laughter, that energy of their focus changes the play. And I mean, that's what's so exciting about it. I mean, that focus nobody shares when you're doing a television commercial. That focus of what's all in the air as all of you are making this is only shared by the people in the room. It isn't necessarily exploded out into the rest of the audience that sees the television commercial. Certainly the film, there's some way but it's not quite the same because the performers don't feed off the audience. And in live theater, of course, we feed off the audience. One person comes and cackles in a rehearsal, and we think we're just brilliant. and don't think for a second that actors and directors and designers and people that chose the show and the people that did the research on the show aren't waiting for that cackle or that, oh, somebody sighed. I saw a Kleenex. That's also kind of high. So, yeah. What else? Yes.
So you said you've seen the play many times?
Yeah.
You said you acted. Have you ever performed the play?
No. I've seen the play many times. I was actually I work for a professional theater company, Nebraska Repertory Theatre, in the summers, and I've been doing that I've been working with it consistently for about 8 years. But I was aware of it since I moved to the University of Nebraska, where I'm a professor of theater, teaching primarily directing, but a little acting, and working with the Nebraska Repertory Theatre. We did this play about 5 years ago. I selected it to be done. I hired the director that directed it, and I saw it several times during that process. But that's the only one, and I've not acted in it. I don't act very much anymore. Yeah.
Was there anything that you did in that production that you wish you could have done in this one?
Well, in that production, we did something that I wish we could have done in this production, but it was impossible with the architecture of Cape Theater, and that was that we really did fly someone. Someone actually flies up in the air. And I think you'll know where that is, yeah.
You say you direct many plays. Okay. What criteria are you follow to choose a play?
Well, for me, when I select plays, I mean, I think there's a slightly different criteria for each play selection. I really want to like the play myself, and that my sort of criteria for myself is that I like things that are intellectually stimulating. I like things that will cause discussion. I like things that are entertaining, even if it's, I mean, I love directing Hamlet, for example, and you think Hamlet's a tragedy, but it's entertaining in that there's so much there to grasp. There's jokes and funny things as well as the really tragic things and saying goodbye to the characters that you like. So I like things to be entertaining. And then I like stuff that touches my heart, that, awakens emotion in me.
Why it touches your heart?
Huh?
Why it touches your heart?
Why it touches my
What?
What?
What touches you?
What touches my heart? Oh gosh, almost so many things touch my heart. Things that make me giggle touch my heart. Things that make me tear up touch my heart. A beautiful thing outside. It was such a beautiful time to be in Conway. So beauty touches my heart. People who are brave. So people that I would admire, or I admire what they're trying to do, touches my heart. It's just so many things. It's stuff that makes me feel like that makes me feel alive as a human being. I guess that's it. And that's a little different than intellectual, though they're so close, aren't they? You know, intellect and emotions are so close, because it's often the intellect that makes us be able to appreciate the emotional. Yeah.
So you said you worked with the Nebraska Repertory Theatre. What are some of the things that you prefer working with professionals versus students, and like how different is it working for like doing a play at a college rather than for professional repertory theater?
It's really interesting. That's a very good question. I really enjoy working with professionals, but with professionals we're always exploring, we're always trying to discover the play that is in our particular group. Like as I was saying, back to collaboration. So if I'm with professional actors, there's some stuff that we don't have to talk about. You know, there's some stuff that they just know that they're going to have to be able to do this accent, and so we don't have to spend time on that. So we're able sometimes to dig a little deeper into the actual characters in the story. But with the repertory theater, one of the reasons we exist is to use students in the professional company, because we call it a lab. It's like a lab. Where students get a chance to be in a professional theater production, in a professional theater company, for that particular role that they're in. And so I talk about play selection, I choose at least one play that has roles for students in it. And then, there's not much difference, do you know? Then as far as play selection for students, it's just we try to give students as many opportunities to do different kinds of genres. So a farce and a Shakespeare tragedy and a contemporary play that's really sassy. All of those things we try to give in a 4-year period as much range as we can in the different types of work that actors and designers and lighting designers and all of the students will have an opportunity to do. And in a way, for choosing shows for Nebraska Rep, we try to find a great variety. So this season coming up, we're doing an adaptation of Emma by Jane Austen, which is very sassy, kind of 90-minute adaptation. There's no scenery, particularly. There's just a single backdrop, and then the scenes are changed with people moving screens, but yet there's lots of focus on the language and the British accents and the beautiful costumes. Those are the things that we're interested in. Then we're doing a contemporary play called Mrs. Mannerly, and that's by Jeffrey Hatcher, and it's Jeffrey Hatcher, when he grew up, he took an etiquette class, a class on how to set the table properly and how to answer questions properly and all that sort of stuff. He took this class. And so it's Jeffrey Hatcher and Mrs. Mannerly, the supposed teacher of this class back in the 1960s. And then the actor playing Jeffrey also plays all the rest of the characters in the play. And they turn to the audience and say, "Oh, now I'm taking you to the morning of my big test." And then he jumps into scene. So it's told in a completely different way than Emma is. And then the last one is called Making God Laugh, and it's a 4-scene play that's totally realistic, that takes place in 2000, 1990, 1980, and 1970. 4 different scenes that are 10 years apart, and it's a very dysfunctional family. So we have all of the clothes and attitudes of those different decades. So the plays are really, really, really different too. So that's one of the things I look at. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Kind of. I do that. Yes, ma'am.
What has been your most challenging role as a director here at Hendrix when working on this production?
That's a hard one.
Careful.
That's a hard one. It's, you know, it's hardest. Yeah, dealing with Danny. No, and he now is gonna pout for the rest of the time I'm here because that is totally untrue. The opposite of that is true. I would say one of the things that we tried to do was we had an idea that we wanted to use earth, air, fire, and water in the play. They're called out in the play. There's storms and there's all kinds of things. And one of the ways we wanted to do that was not with all the zingy, whizzy kind of special effects that you see on movies and in some really expensive plays with huge budgets. We wanted to do some magic that was simple. And I think that was the biggest challenge from the very beginning is how to make that simple magic on the stage. And we'll see and have it be effective. And we're still tweaking some of that simple magic. So you'll have to tell me after you see it whether you think we succeeded in that. But I would say that was the biggest challenge.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Out of all the plays that you've either acted or directed, which one do you think is probably your favorite play?
Well, I had the opportunity to play in a production called Wit by Margaret Edson quite a long time ago. It was the first time I did it twice, once in 2000 and once in like 2004 maybe. And it's about a college professor who's dying of ovarian cancer. And she's very brutal. You know, think of the most brutal professor you've ever had and then multiplied by 10. She's very sassy, very, very exacting. You know, everything has to be exact. And she's very rude and mean to her students. She cuts them to the quick. And she's dying of ovarian cancer, and she puts herself in a program, an experimental program where the doctors are just as brutal as she is to her students. And somehow, in the course of dying of ovarian cancer, she understands what life is about. I get to play it twice. It was fabulous. I had long hair when I got cast, and I shaved my head for the role. Shaved it twice. I'd shave it again in a minute if somebody offered me the role. I don't know if I want to play the role again, but I certainly would shave my head again if there was a good role at the end of it. That was the most, because I think Vivian I really became Vivian. I mean, she never will leave me. I mean, I think that's true of lots of characters, but Vivian lives in me. She still talks to me sometimes. Yes.
I was wondering if you, because you mentioned sometimes being asked to direct shows that you weren't initially particularly enthusiastic about. I was wondering if you had any specific plays where at first you were maybe not entirely sure that you were thrilled about directing it and then found something in it that you really liked.
Yeah, I think that happens all the time. I have two examples. I directed Church Basement Ladies a couple of years ago. And Church Basement Ladies is, I don't know if you know that play. It's not a Southern play, I'll tell you. It's a Northern play. It's about the Norwegians in northern Minnesota, and they're Lutherans, and it's a whole culture that you guys don't know about. And that's where I grew up. I'm a Lutheran girl from northern Minnesota. And everybody in my town was Norwegian or Swedish except me, and as you already know, I was German. But with my blonde hair and blue eyes, I passed. So we didn't talk too much about it. Anyway, it's about these women who work in the basement, in the church basement, and do the food for funerals. I think there's church ladies everywhere, and they make the food for the funerals, and they help with the fundraisers and all that kind of stuff. Well, it's a musical, and it's very, very, very silly, and it doesn't have a lot of substance. It doesn't really have the part that I said that stimulates the intellect. It didn't really have that, But I had so much fun doing it. And again, it was because of collaboration. I had a wonderful musical director, I had a wonderful choreographer. I worked with wonderful women who could sing really well, and we just had fun. I had fun using their talents to express the play in the best way we could, and that was really fun. And then I did a play a couple of years ago called Souvenir, a Fantasia on the life of Florence Foster Jenkins. And I sort of went into it knowing that it would be a hit also, that I thought it would be a hit. It's a two-person show, and it takes place in a cabaret. And so I hired a man who can play the piano very well, and who's really sassy because he does the narration, and he also has to sing. So I hired a guy who I knew to do that. I didn't know he couldn't read music. So there's problem number one. And then Florence Foster Jenkins, if you Google her, there's some stuff on the internet of her singing. She was a wealthy New York kind of socialite in the 30s and probably 20s too. And she decided that she thought she was a good singer. And so she started doing private recitals. She would give people the tickets to come. And she lived at the Ritz in New York, and the concerts were held at the Ritz. And she would sing, and she was horrible. Horrible. And somehow, nobody ever figured out if she knew she was horrible and that it was a joke, that people would come and hear her concerts, or if she actually thought that she was brilliant. And I mean, she did the height that she went to in fame was she did a concert at Carnegie Hall that was sold out. And rumor has it that people always just laughed behind their hands. And she thought that they were just moved to paroxysms of a joy at her voice. And really they were moved by paroxysms of laughter. So at this Carnegie Hall concert, supposedly she figured out that they might have been laughing. And she actually died soon after. Well, I thought it was workmanlike kind of show. And as it turned out, we chose to do the first half of the show in our little theater. We have a little black box theater. And then we moved the Carnegie Hall section of the show to our larger theater, which isn't huge, but it's a proscenium house. And so at the end of the first act, the stage manager, the assistant stage managers, which we put in usherette costumes of the 1940s, said, "Follow us to the performance of Florence Foster Jenkins in Carnegie Hall. Follow me." And so everybody went out in the lobby and had coffee, and then they went into the other theater where she did her concert, which is just, it was so much fun. I hired a choreographer because I'm not much of a choreographer, but I could have done the choreography because all it was stupid choreography where she's tripping on her feet and she's, she'll go down in the big thing and then she'll teeter, that kind of choreography. I had so much fun. And then the thing that's beautiful about the play is she's horrible and you only hear little snippets, and it's hard for an actual singer to be able to sing that stuff because it's really terrible. I could sing it for you, but you'd have to leave. At the end, so the piano player now, he's on the big stage, and we've got these big curtains and these big sprays of flowers for her performance at Carnegie Hall. And he says, not long after that, she died. She went out for lunch. She went to a store to shop, and she collapsed, and the taxi took her home, and she died. And he said, and it's as though he's reminiscing about her. This actually is the date of her death, 20 years later. And so he's reminiscing, and he says, I never knew, even though I was her accompanist for all those years, I never knew if she knew how bad she was, or if she really did think that she was beautiful. And I think, actually, that she thought she sounded like this. And this is the part that was interesting. because he didn't read music and he had to play the music for Ave Maria. He had to teach himself how to read music so he could play this. But Ave Maria was her signature song. And so I hired this woman who sang, it was gorgeous. And we have this ethereal light coming down on her, and she's in this beautiful gown. And this is what she thought she sounded like. And then this fabulous Ave Maria ends the show. And there's not a dry eye in the house. So I think it was because, again, we figured everything out for it. Amelia, I'm answering your question.
Yes.
We figured, the thing that was fun about it is that we figured it all out. We figured out how to squeeze the most love and compassion and humanity out of these people. So, yeah.
When did you exactly know that you are going to be a director?
In theater?
Yeah.
Well, when I was 9 years old, I tried to get into a play. It was a 4-H play. I tried to get into it, but they said that you had to be 12. I wanted to play Fifi the French maid. But then I knew that I wanted to do theater for a living in my senior year in high school.
So did you have like a director that you admired, like someone who inspired you?
My director my senior year in school was a guy who had just graduated from college, and he was the person that inspired me. And then, lots of people on the way. One person doesn't, well, for some people it does, perhaps, provide enough fuel for the rest of your life. But I've always had lots of people that inspired me. One of the reasons I wanted to come back is that I was inspired by the people here when I was here before, and thought it would be fun to get another shot of that energy. She's shooting me with energy. Any other questions? Yes.
You mentioned being involved with many parts of the theater before you became a director.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that having all this variation in what you've done helped you be a better director and more understand all the complex parts of putting a show together by taking all these separate pieces and making it a work of art?
Well, I think it definitely has. Coming up the way I did through act, I have done everything. I haven't done everything as well as people that specialize in those areas, but I think there's a certain knowledge of just stagecraft, and that's like all of the crafts involved in doing work for the stage. I think that's really, really helpful. Yeah.
How do you see theater evolving? Because to build off of his question, I've been talking to grad schools and stuff, and one of the major things that I've been told by at least 5 of them is that one of the big things for actors now is typing, which is knowing who you are and doing it really, really well, better than anybody else. And that the age of being this super well-rounded, but I can also design costumes and sew, but also build things, is kind of coming to an end. Where do you think the specializations are coming in theater, and what kind of role do you think they have?
I think if you are going to LA or New York, you want to primarily be in media. If you primarily want to do film and television and commercials, I think that's really right. But our students that leave are very well-rounded, and they don't necessarily, and they end up doing lots of stuff. One of my students who graduated a number of years ago, so I say that that's what teachers tell you now and what grad schools tell you now, that you need to know your type. And I think that's part of the whole stream. I think you need to know your type, and you need to follow that type. But if you're a good actor, you can play any type. And it's so true. It usually isn't at the entry level that you can do that. It's just like I tell people, actors learn how to do a monologue. And then as soon as you become someone who people know, even in an individual community, you don't do monologues anymore. I didn't do monologues the last 5 or 6 years I was in Chicago. I read for parts. So the skill that I had to have was being a good cold reader, not necessarily someone who did monologues. But you have to know how to do monologues to enter into that world. I think you have to know your type and you have to really specialize in who you are so that you can get entered into that. But then, if you're a writer and they find out you're a writer, then you might get a writing credit, or you might, it's just how everybody's path works. I have a student now who came to us from Disney. So he was a character Disney guy. So he already moved really well. Couldn't act at all. In 4 years, we taught him a little bit about acting. He got to LA and he immediately started doing commercial stuff because he could play himself. And then he got cast in Actors Gang. And they taught him a whole bunch about acting. And now he's an equity actor who does commercial work and film work, but he plays a huge range of actors, of different characters in Actors Gang. Another actor who went there has been very successful in TV stuff, is also writing feature films, is also acting in feature films, is also met someone and got together a singing group. So she's a singer with a very indie pop kind of group that plays at the shishiest places in LA. At the same time, she's making her living doing a myriad of things in the business. It's true of almost all the students, all of our students. They're doing a little of this, they're doing a little of that, they're doing a little of this, and they're focusing on what their individual vein of gold is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think entry level, though, you might have to do that. But see, I poo-poo it a little bit. I mean, I don't know what my type is. I mean, I don't know. I didn't know. I've never really known what my type was. I can just act. And if they think that if they need a tall blonde dummy or they need a tall blonde intellectual, I'll try and do either one. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to be tall and blonde. Unless I let, yeah. I think I'm going to be. I've got 5 minutes left. Wow. Yes.
Did you enter graduate school immediately after college?
No.
And like, because I've talked to several actors and they say immediately after college, go out, see what you need in the world, and then go to grad school to work on what you need to. How long was it between like you exiting college, working, and then realizing directing was what you really wanted and were really interested in before you entered graduate school for that?
12 years. That's longer than most, but yeah. And I wasn't interested in being an actor anymore. I was interested in being a director by that time. I run a graduate program at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln in directing. And we aren't interested in people that haven't been out and directing. People that have taken the skills that they've learned from their undergraduate, this is directors, not necessarily actors, taking the skills that they've learned in their undergraduate and going out in the world and trying out what they can do. And so, and that works out pretty well, because then the people that come to us know what they need next. And then they're also it's very easy to say what we offer. You know, we offer a 3-year program that does that where you get work in this, and this. And if that's not interesting to you, then we're the absolute wrong program for you. And so then we don't confuse people by them thinking that they can study, they can get their PhD with us, because they can't. It's just not it's not possible. So our actors, I mean, I think they're people of my mind is that if you're an actor and you feel that you still have skills that you need to learn, one of the ways you can learn more skills is in grad school. If you still feel like you need more skills before you're ready to go out in the world, that's one place to get them, is in grad school. The other thing is to just go out and see, then the other school is what you said. Go out and see what you still need, and go back if you find a place that can give you what you need to take the next step as an artist. Everyone is silent.
I have 12-ish. I don't know how. Yeah, it's about 12.
Okay.
Do you want to do one more, or are you good?
Anybody have another question? Okay, then I will give you a commercial message, and that is that you need to see Anatomy of Grey. and you need to, I'll be there all of the night, so feel free to come up and tell me what you thought. That's one of the things I do at Nebraska Rep, is I stand in the lobby and I take the compliments and I take the blows. So I'm very good at it. So come and tell me what you thought. Thank you so much.